Caleb Mercer had spent most of his life repairing things that other people abandoned. Broken houses, collapsed barns, old churches no one prayed in anymore. He liked places that carried scars. Most people saw rot and decay. Caleb saw stories. That was why he accepted the job at Hollow Creek. The town barely existed on modern maps. A forgotten settlement hidden deep in the forests of northern Pennsylvania, surrounded by endless pines and steep hills. The job sounded simple. An investment company had purchased an old property outside town and wanted it restored before winter. The place was called Ashcroft Farm, a massive farmhouse built in the late 1800s. The pay was excellent. The nearest contractor refused the work. The second contractor refused too. The company representative blamed it on superstition. People in Hollow Creek believed ridiculous local legends. Caleb laughed when he heard that. He had spent 15 years working in places supposedly haunted. Nothing ever happened. Ghost stories were usually excuses created by lonely towns and bored people. 3 days later, he drove into Hollow Creek. The town immediately felt wrong. Not scary, just wrong. The streets were empty despite it being early afternoon. A gas station stood open, but no customers were inside. An old diner had lights on, yet nobody sat near the windows. Even the birds seemed absent. Caleb noticed that before anything else. No birdsong, no chirping, nothing, only silence. The forest surrounding the town looked unusually dark. The trees grew so close together that sunlight struggled to penetrate their branches. It felt less like a forest and more like a wall. Caleb stopped at the diner for coffee. The waitress filled his cup without speaking. She looked about 60. When Caleb mentioned Ashcroft Farm, the woman froze. For several seconds, she simply stared at him. Then she quietly asked whether he planned to stay there. Caleb said yes. The waitress lowered her eyes. A man sitting alone near the counter stood up immediately and left. Another customer followed. Within half a minute, half the diner had emptied. Caleb laughed awkwardly. Nobody laughed back. The waitress slid his coffee across the counter. Then she whispered something. Caleb almost missed it. Never go into the cellar after dark. He smiled. Local legends again. The woman looked completely serious. Caleb paid and left. By late afternoon, he reached Ashcroft Farm. The property sat nearly 2 miles outside town. The farmhouse stood alone atop a hill. Even from a distance, it appeared enormous. 4 stories, dark wooden walls, countless windows, a wraparound porch. The structure looked less like a farmhouse and more like a forgotten mansion. Tall grass covered the yard. Dead cornfields stretched toward the forest. The place had clearly been abandoned for decades. Caleb parked his truck and climbed out. A cold wind moved through the fields. The sky remained clear, yet the temperature suddenly dropped. He rubbed his arms. For a brief moment, he felt watched. The sensation vanished quickly. Inside, the house was surprisingly intact. Dust covered everything. Furniture remained exactly where previous owners had left it. Pictures still hung on walls. Books filled shelves. A grandfather clock stood frozen in the hallway. It was as though the residents had simply disappeared one day. Caleb spent several hours inspecting the structure. The roof required repairs. Several rooms needed restoration. Nothing unusual. Near sunset, he discovered the cellar door. It sat beneath the kitchen. Heavy oak, iron hinges, a thick metal lock. The door looked newer than the rest of the house. Someone had clearly reinforced it. That caught his attention. Most old cellars were ordinary storage spaces. This one looked more like a prison. Caleb examined the lock. The metal showed deep scratches, as if people had repeatedly tried to force it open, or keep it shut. He chuckled. Probably livestock once stored below. Nothing mysterious. Still, the cellar bothered him. He couldn't explain why. That night he slept in an upstairs bedroom. The wind howled around the house. Floorboards creaked. Old pipes groaned. Normal sounds, nothing more. Around midnight he woke suddenly. His eyes opened. Complete darkness surrounded him. Something had disturbed his sleep. He listened carefully. Silence. Then he heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks. Somewhere below. Caleb sat upright. The sound came again. Knock, knock, knock. Not from outside. Not from a wall. From beneath the floor. His stomach tightened. The cellar. The noise seemed to originate directly below the house. He checked his watch. 12:17 a.m. Knock, knock, knock. Knocks again. The rhythm felt deliberate, intelligent, like someone requesting entry. Caleb climbed from bed. He grabbed a flashlight. The knocking stopped immediately. Every sound vanished, even the wind. The house felt unnaturally still. After waiting several minutes, he eventually returned to bed. He told himself it was settling wood. Old foundations often produce strange noises. Nothing more. Yet sleep refused to come, because deep down he knew something. Wood did not knock. The next morning, Caleb visited the town library. He wanted historical records of Ashcroft Farm. The elderly librarian hesitated when he mentioned the property. Then she disappeared into a back room. Several minutes later, she returned, carrying a thick folder. Most documents were newspaper clippings, missing persons reports, old photographs, articles dating back over a century. The farm originally belonged to a wealthy landowner named Theodore Ashcroft. According to records, Theodore lived there with his wife and 3 children. In October 1891, the entire family vanished. No bodies were found, no suspects identified. The disappearance remained unsolved. Years later, another family purchased the property. They lasted 8 months. Then their youngest son disappeared. Again, no body. Again, no explanation. Over the following decades, similar incidents occurred. Residents vanished. Visitors vanished. Workers vanished. Even trespassers disappeared. Always without evidence. Always without witnesses. The final article carried a date from 1978. A group of college students entered the abandoned farmhouse seeking thrills. Only one returned. The survivor refused interviews. He was later admitted to a psychiatric institution. The official record ended there. The story sounded unbelievable, yet the sheer number of incidents unsettled him. No property accumulated that much tragedy by coincidence. The librarian watched him carefully. "You should leave before nightfall." Caleb asked why. The woman seemed reluctant to answer. Finally, she leaned closer. Every disappearance happened after people heard knocking. Caleb felt cold. 3 knocks, exactly what he had heard. He asked where the sound came from. The librarian stared at him. From underneath. That evening, clouds covered the sky. Rain began shortly after sunset. Caleb continued working despite his growing discomfort. He repaired sections of the porch and reinforced support beams. By midnight, exhaustion forced him inside. The storm intensified. Thunder rolled across the hills. Rain hammered the roof. Caleb sat in the kitchen, reviewing construction plans. Then, it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came directly beneath him. The coffee mug in his hand trembled. For several seconds, he remained frozen. Knock, knock, knock. Louder this time. The cellar door rattled. Caleb stared at it. Every instinct told him to walk away. Instead, he grabbed his flashlight. Curiosity won. It always did. He approached the cellar. The knocking stopped. The silence felt even worse. Slowly, he unlocked the heavy door. The hinges groaned. A foul smell drifted upward. Wet earth, rotting wood, something older, something buried. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. Caleb shined his flashlight downward. Nothing. only dirt walls and shadows. He began descending. Each step creaked. The temperature dropped dramatically. His breath became visible. Halfway down, he noticed strange marks carved into the walls. Hundreds of symbols. Some looked ancient. Others resembled claw marks. At the bottom of the stairs lay a large underground chamber, much larger than the house above should have allowed. The flashlight beam swept across stone walls, then stopped. Caleb's heart nearly failed. Chains, massive iron chains bolted into the floor. Dozens of them. Every chain converged toward the center of the room, where a circular pit opened in the earth. The pit appeared impossibly black. The flashlight could not reveal its bottom. Caleb stepped closer. The smell intensified. A deep unease settled over him. The chains stretched downward into the darkness, as if something enormous had once been restrained below, or still was. Suddenly a sound emerged from the pit. A voice, faint, weak, almost human. "Help me." Caleb froze. The voice belonged to a young woman. She sounded terrified. "Help me, please." Caleb shined his flashlight into the abyss. Nothing. Only darkness. "Who are you?" The answer came immediately. "Please help me get out. I've been down here so long." The voice sounded genuine, desperate, human. Caleb moved closer to the edge. His flashlight flickered. To move. Not physically, more like a living thing shifting beneath the earth. "How did you get down there?" No response. Then another voice answered. A man's voice. "Please, help us." Then another, and another, and another. Dozens, hundreds, men, women, children, all speaking at once, all begging, all crying, all pleading. The sound echoed through the chamber. Caleb stumbled backward. Every hair on his body stood upright. The voices became louder. "Help us! Help us! Help us!" The chains suddenly rattled, violently. The entire cellar shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Caleb turned toward the stairs. Then he heard something that made his blood turn to ice. A new voice emerged from the pit. Not desperate, not frightened, amused. "Caleb." The voice knew his name. He froze. "Caleb, come closer." The sound no longer resembled a human being. Its words stretched unnaturally, like someone imitating speech without understanding it. The darkness inside the pit shifted. Something moved far below. Something huge. For a split second, the flashlight beam reflected off an eye larger than a truck tire, watching him from the abyss. Caleb ran. He sprinted toward the staircase. Behind him, the voices erupted into laughter. Thousands of voices, laughing together. The cellar door slammed shut moments after he escaped. The house immediately became silent. No laughter, no voices, nothing. Caleb leaned against the kitchen wall, breathing heavily. His hands shook uncontrollably. He knew what he had seen, and he knew something even worse. The thing below the farmhouse had known his name. Outside, thunder exploded across the sky. For a brief instant, lightning illuminated the window. A figure stood in the field, watching the house. Tall, thin, completely motionless. Caleb stared. Another flash of lightning lit the darkness. Now there were 3 figures, standing closer, waiting. And when the next lightning strike came, dozens of silhouettes filled the field, all facing Ashcroft Farm, all staring directly at him. And then, from somewhere deep beneath the house, came 3 slow knocks. Caleb did not sleep. He remained in the kitchen until sunrise, gripping a hammer in one hand and a flashlight in the other. The figures outside never moved, at least not while he was watching. They simply stood in the rain, motionless, silent, waiting. Several times he blinked and thought they had disappeared. Then lightning would flash again, revealing them somewhere else. a little closer, a little nearer to the house, as though they only moved when darkness concealed them. Around 4 in the morning, the storm finally weakened. The lightning faded. The silhouettes vanished. When daylight arrived, Caleb rushed outside. The field was empty. No footprints, no signs of anyone standing there during the night. Only wet grass swaying beneath a cold wind. For a few moments, he questioned his own memory. Maybe exhaustion had caused hallucinations. Maybe fear had distorted reality. Then he remembered the cellar, the voices, the eye. No, something real existed beneath Ashcroft Farm. Something ancient, something terrible. By noon, Caleb drove back into Hollow Creek. He wanted answers. The townspeople clearly knew more than they admitted. The diner was nearly empty. The same waitress stood behind the counter. When she saw Caleb enter, genuine surprise appeared on her face. "You came back?" Caleb sat down. "What does that mean?" he asked. The woman hesitated. Then she poured coffee into a mug. "Most people who hear the knocking don't stay long enough to come back into town," she said. Caleb stared at her. "What is under that house?" The waitress immediately looked away. A man eating breakfast nearby suddenly stood up and left. The woman lowered her voice. "You should stop asking questions." "I already started asking." Her expression darkened. "That's exactly why you're in danger." Caleb leaned closer. "Tell me." The waitress remained silent for nearly 30 seconds. Finally, she spoke. "Long before Hollow Creek existed, there was another settlement here. A very old one. Older than America. Older than any records. The local tribes called the valley the mouth below." Caleb frowned. "Why?" "Because they believed something lived under the ground. Something that was never supposed to wake up." The woman swallowed nervously. "They said it spoke with stolen voices." The words sent a chill through Caleb. The voices from the pit, the begging, the crying, the laughter. He asked whether anyone had seen the thing. The waitress shook her head. Nobody who saw it ever returned unchanged. Caleb left the diner more unsettled than before. As he walked toward his truck, an elderly man sitting on a nearby bench called his name. Caleb stopped. The old man looked nearly 90. His skin seemed stretched tightly across his skull. His pale eyes never blinked. "You went into the cellar." It wasn't a question. Caleb slowly nodded. The old man gestured toward an empty seat. "Sit down." Caleb hesitated before obeying. The elderly man studied him carefully. "Did it speak to you?" "Yes." "Did it know your name?" Caleb's stomach tightened. "Yes." The old man closed his eyes. "Then it has noticed you." "Noticed me?" The man nodded. "Most people think the knocking is a trap. They're wrong. The knocking is how it chooses." Caleb felt a knot form inside his chest. "Chooses what?" The old man opened his eyes. "Food." Silence followed. The man stood and walked away. Caleb never got another word from him. That afternoon, he returned to Ashcroft Farm. The entire drive felt different. The forest seemed darker. The shadows beneath the trees appeared deeper. Several times he thought he saw movement between the trunks. Tall shapes, slipping through the woods, keeping pace with his truck, always remaining just out of sight. When he finally reached the farmhouse, he discovered something strange. The front door stood open. Caleb distinctly remembered locking it, yet now it swung gently in the breeze. He immediately checked the interior. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing appeared disturbed. Until he reached the kitchen. Then his blood froze. Mud covered the floor. Dozens of muddy footprints. They emerged from the cellar door. The prints traveled throughout the house. Up the stairs. Across hallways. Through bedrooms. Every room contained them. Yet none led outside. The footprints started in the cellar and ended nowhere. As though something had climbed up from beneath the house and wandered through the building before disappearing. Caleb stared at them for a long time. Then he noticed another detail. The footprints weren't human. Each print possessed 6 elongated toes, like a distorted imitation of a foot. That night he locked every door, every window, every entrance. As darkness fell, the house became oppressively quiet. Even the wind stopped. Ebb sat beside a lantern in the living room. The silence felt unnatural, wrong. Then came the first knock. Knock, knock, knock. Directly beneath him. The floor vibrated. 5 minutes later it happened again. A little louder. Caleb ignored it. 10 minutes later another series echoed through the house. Knock, knock, knock. Now the walls trembled. The lantern flame flickered violently. The knocking continued throughout the evening. Always 3 knocks, always from below, never stopping for long. By midnight the sound had become unbearable. Every few minutes it returned, demanding attention, demanding acknowledgement. Eventually, Caleb snapped. He stormed into the kitchen. Enough. The words echoed through the house. Silence immediately followed. Absolute silence. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice emerged from beneath the floor. Caleb, his heart nearly stopped. The voice sounded exactly like his mother. His mother had died 6 years earlier. Caleb backed away. The voice came again, sweet, gentle, perfectly familiar. Caleb, honey, help me. Tears instantly formed in his eyes. No, impossible. His mother was dead. Yet the voice continued. I'm cold. Please help me. The sound was identical. Every detail, every inflection, every emotion. For a brief moment, Caleb nearly opened the cellar. Then, logic returned. Whatever lived below was mimicking her, using memories, using grief, manipulating him. The realization filled him with horror, because it meant the thing somehow knew intimate details about his life. The voice changed. His mother's tone vanished. Now another voice emerged. His younger brother. The brother who died in a car accident years ago. Caleb, please, we're trapped. Help us. Then his father. Then old friends. Then people he hadn't seen since childhood. One after another. Every dead person he had ever known, calling from beneath the house, begging for rescue. The voices lasted nearly an hour. Then they stopped simultaneously. The silence that followed felt even worse. At 2:17 a.m., something struck the front door. Boom! The entire house shook. Caleb jumped. A second impact followed. Boom! Wood splintered. A third strike came moments later. Boom! Caleb rushed toward the window. Outside stood a figure. At first glance it resembled a human. Then lightning illuminated it. The thing was wrong. Terribly wrong. Its arms hung too low. Its neck bent at an unnatural angle. Its face appeared stretched, like wet clay molded into a crude imitation of a person. The creature stood over 7 feet tall. Its skin looked gray and swollen. Then Caleb noticed the worst part. Its face. The creature wore his mother's face. Not perfectly, close enough. A twisted copy. Its mouth opened impossibly wide. Far wider than any human mouth should. Rows of black teeth filled the darkness inside. Another figure emerged from the field. Then, another. And another. Soon dozens surrounded the farmhouse. Everyone wore a stolen face. Faces of men, women, children. All smiling, all staring, all waiting. The front door exploded inward. Wood shattered across the hallway. The nearest creature stepped inside. Caleb grabbed a fireplace poker. The monster tilted its head. Then it spoke, using his mother's voice. You should have opened the cellar. The thing lunged. Caleb swung the poker. The metal struck its skull. The creature collapsed instantly. The moment it hit the floor, something impossible happened. Its body burst apart, not into blood, not into flesh, into dirt. Thousands of insects erupted from inside it. Spiders, beetles, worms, centipedes. An entire colony of crawling things poured across the floor. Caleb recoiled in disgust. Outside, every creature suddenly froze, completely motionless, as if listening. Then all of them turned toward the forest simultaneously. Something was coming. A deep rumbling echoed through the valley. The ground began to vibrate. The creatures appeared terrified. One by one they retreated into the darkness, running, fleeing, escaping. Whatever approached frightened them. That realization terrified Caleb even more, because the creatures themselves were nightmares, and now they were running from something else. The rumbling intensified. The farmhouse shook violently. Windows rattled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then came a sound Caleb would never forget. A roar. Not from outside, not from the woods, from underneath the house. The roar emerged from deep below the earth. Ancient, enormous, hungry. The chains in the cellar exploded into motion, rattling so violently that the floorboards bounced beneath Caleb's feet. The roar came again, louder, closer, and then a voice spoke from beneath the house. Not stolen, not copied, not human, the real voice, the voice of the thing itself. I am waking up. The words seemed to shake reality itself. Cracks spread across the kitchen floor. Several boards snapped apart. From the gaps below, Caleb saw something moving. A gigantic shadow shifting beneath the foundations. Something far too large to fit beneath any house. Far too large to fit beneath the entire hill. The earth outside suddenly collapsed. Trees toppled. The ground split open across the fields. And from the darkness inside those cracks, thousands of glowing eyes slowly opened. Watching, waiting, staring directly at Ashcroft Farm. Caleb stood frozen. The farmhouse groaned around him, as if the entire structure were being twisted by invisible hands. Outside, the earth continued splitting apart. Long cracks stretched across the fields in every direction. Within those cracks, countless glowing eyes stared upward. Hundreds, thousands, maybe more. None of them blinked. None of them moved. They simply watched. Watching him, watching the house, watching whatever was waking beneath the hill. A deafening crack echoed through the valley. One of the support beams inside the farmhouse snapped. Part of the ceiling collapsed into the hallway. Dust filled the air. Caleb coughed and stumbled backward. For several seconds he considered running, getting into his truck, driving as far away as possible. But deep down he already knew the truth. Whatever lived beneath Ashcroft Farm wasn't confined to the property anymore. The thing had begun waking, and if the old stories were true, nowhere nearby would be safe. Then something caught his attention. A sound, not from below, from upstairs. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Thump, thump, thump. Caleb's blood ran cold. He was alone. At least he was supposed to be. The footsteps continued, crossing the second floor, moving toward the staircase. Caleb backed into the living room. The sound stopped. Silence returned. Then he heard breathing, very close, somewhere near the top of the stairs. A wet, raspy breath, the kind made by lungs filled with fluid. Caleb gripped the fireplace poker tighter. The staircase remained hidden in darkness. Nothing moved. Nothing appeared. Yet the breathing continued. A minute passed, then 2, then 3. Suddenly a figure stepped into view. Caleb almost dropped the poker. The person standing at the top of the stairs looked exactly like him. Same face, same height, same clothes, same scar above the left eyebrow. Everything identical. The duplicate stared silently. Caleb stared back. Neither moved. The resemblance was perfect, except for the eyes. The thing's eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils, only darkness. The copy smiled. Caleb's own face stretched into an impossible grin. Too wide, too unnatural, too many teeth. The duplicate began descending the stairs, one step at a time, slowly, patiently, as though it already knew how the encounter would end. Caleb backed away. The thing continued smiling. Then it spoke, using Caleb's own voice. "You should have listened." Every muscle in Caleb's body tightened. The creature took another step, and another, and another. Then it suddenly sprinted. Caleb reacted instantly. He swung the fireplace poker with all his strength. The metal connected with the creature's skull. A loud crack echoed through the room. The duplicate collapsed. For one brief moment, relief flooded through him, then the body began moving. Not standing, changing. Its flesh rippled, like liquid. Bones shifted beneath the skin. Arms elongated. Legs twisted. The face melted. Within seconds, the human shape disappeared completely. A nightmare replaced it. The creature now stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its limbs resembled spider legs wrapped in gray skin. Its mouth split vertically across its head. Rows of black teeth lined the opening. The thing lunged. Caleb barely avoided it. The monster crashed through a wall. Wood exploded everywhere. The farmhouse shook violently. Caleb ran toward the kitchen. Behind him, the creature screeched. The sound hurt his ears. He grabbed a lantern from the counter and threw it. The glass shattered against the monster. Flames erupted instantly. The creature screamed. Its body ignited like dry paper. Fire consumed it within seconds. Then something strange happened. The monster didn't burn into ash. It burned into darkness. Its body dissolved into black smoke. The smoke rushed downward through cracks in the floor, returning to whatever existed beneath the house. Caleb stared. The realization hit him immediately. The creatures weren't independent. They were extensions, pieces, fragments of something much larger, something below, something waking. The roar returned, far louder than before. The entire hill trembled. Outside, trees toppled throughout the forest. The ground shook so violently that Caleb struggled to remain standing. Then came another sound. Engines. Several vehicles approached the property. Headlights appeared through the darkness. 3 trucks emerged from the forest road. They stopped near the farmhouse. Armed men climbed out. Of them, all carrying rifles. Caleb rushed outside. The men immediately pointed weapons at him. "Wait!" One of them stepped forward. He looked about 50. Gray beard, weathered face, cold eyes. "You're Caleb?" "Yes." The man lowered his rifle slightly. "Good. You're still alive. For now." Caleb frowned. "Who are you?" The stranger glanced toward the farmhouse. "People who've been dealing with this place for a very long time." The answer wasn't helpful. Before Caleb could ask more questions, another roar erupted from below. The armed men exchanged nervous looks. One of them muttered a curse. The leader sighed. "We're too late." "Too late for what?" The man stared directly at Caleb. "It's waking faster than expected." Caleb demanded answers. Finally, the leader nodded. "You deserve the truth." The group entered the farmhouse. Several minutes later, they gathered in the living room. The leader introduced himself as Victor Hale. According to him, his family had guarded Hollow Creek for generations. Their purpose was simple: keep the thing beneath Ashcroft Farm asleep. For over 300 years, they had succeeded. Until now. Victor explained that the creature below wasn't a demon, nor a ghost, nor anything humanity had a name for. It existed long before human civilization, long before recorded history. Something ancient had fallen from the sky thousands of years ago. Not a meteor, not exactly, a living thing. It buried itself deep beneath the valley and began dreaming. While it slept, strange things happened around it. Animals disappeared. People vanished. Entire settlements abandoned the region. Those who remained eventually discovered the truth. The thing could influence minds, create copies, steal memories, imitate voices, and feed. Feed on what? Caleb asked. Victor's expression darkened. Fear. The room fell silent. The creature fed on terror. Every nightmare, every panic, every ounce of human dread. For thousands of years, it had grown stronger. The chains beneath the farmhouse weren't designed to physically restrain it. They served another purpose: to keep it asleep. The original settlers had constructed them using knowledge passed down through generations. As long as the creature slept, humanity remained safe. As long as it dreamed, the world survived. Caleb thought about the eye inside the pit, the voices, the creatures, and then he asked the question nobody wanted to answer. What happens if it wakes completely? Nobody spoke. Finally, Victor replied, "We don't know." That answer frightened Caleb more than anything else. A crash suddenly echoed from upstairs. Everyone jumped. Another crash followed, then another. Something massive moved through the second floor. The armed men immediately raised their rifles. The ceiling above them cracked. Plaster rained down. A third crash shook the house, then silence. Victor cursed under his breath. It's here. The floor suddenly exploded upward. Wood erupted everywhere. A gigantic arm burst through the boards. The limb looked impossibly long, covered in gray flesh. Thousands of tiny eyes opened across its surface. Every eye stared independently. The sight nearly drove Caleb insane. The arm seized one of the armed men. Before anyone could react, the victim was dragged screaming into the darkness below. His scream ended instantly. The room erupted into chaos. Gunfire exploded. Bullets tore through the monstrous limb. The thing barely reacted. More arms emerged from beneath the floor. 5, 10, 20, each covered in eyes, each reaching upward, searching, hungry. The farmhouse began collapsing around them. Victor grabbed Caleb. "Move!" Everyone ran. They barely escaped before the entire living room caved inward. The house seemed to be sinking. The hill itself was collapsing. The ground opened beneath Ashcroft Farm. An enormous crater formed. Wood, stone, furniture, everything disappeared into the abyss. Caleb and the survivors stumbled across the field. Then they turned around and saw it. For the first time, the thing beneath Hollow Creek. Only part of it emerged, yet that part alone was larger than the farmhouse. A colossal mass of shifting flesh, eyes, mouths, limbs, shapes that changed every second. Looking at it felt wrong. Human brains weren't built to understand such a form. Every time Caleb focused on one detail, it transformed into something else. The creature seemed alive and impossible simultaneously. Victor stared in horror. "No, no, no." The old man looked terrified. "What's wrong?" Caleb asked. Victor pointed toward the sky. His heart stopped. The stars were disappearing. Not hidden by clouds. Gone, one by one. As if something vast moved above the atmosphere. Something enormous. Something descending. Victor's voice trembled. "It's calling." Calling what? The answer came from the abyss itself. A voice so deep it shook the valley. A voice older than civilization. Older than history. Older than humanity. Home. The word echoed across the world. And high above the clouds, something answered. The word echoed across the valley. Home. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The sound seemed to linger in the air, long after the creature had finished speaking. High above Hollow Creek, the stars continued vanishing, one after another. The night sky looked as though something enormous was passing between Earth and the heavens. Something impossible. Something approaching. Victor's face had gone completely pale. Caleb had never seen such terror in another human being, not even close. One of the remaining men lowered his rifle. His hands shook uncontrollably. What answered it? Victor didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the sky. Finally, he whispered, "I prayed my entire life that I would never find out." Another roar erupted from the crater. The massive creature beneath Ashcroft Farm continued rising. More of its body emerged from the abyss. Every new section appeared more unnatural than the last. Millions of eyes opened and closed across its flesh. Mouths formed and disappeared. Entire faces surfaced briefly before sinking back into the shifting mass. Some faces looked human, others looked like animals. Many looked like nothing Caleb had ever seen before. The sight made his head hurt. Looking directly at the thing felt dangerous, as though reality itself struggled to process its existence. The creature continued growing, expanding, unfolding. The ground trembled beneath every movement. Trees collapsed throughout the valley. Windows shattered in the distant town. Car alarms echoed from Hollow Creek. The thing was no longer waking. It was awake. Victor suddenly grabbed Caleb's shoulder. "We need to leave." "Leave?" Caleb stared at him. "Where exactly are we supposed to go?" Victor pointed toward the forest. "There's a church 3 miles east. Old foundation, protected ground. We might still have a chance there." "Might?" Victor didn't answer. That alone told Caleb everything. The survivors began moving. 4 armed men remained alive, along with Victor and Caleb. 6 people, that was all. As they hurried through the forest, the sounds behind them grew louder. Branches snapped, earth shifted. The creature continued emerging. Yet strangely, it didn't chase them. It remained near the crater, waiting, watching, almost as though something else mattered more. After 20 minutes, they reached an old dirt road. The church appeared ahead. Ancient stone walls, broken bell tower, weathered wooden doors. The structure looked abandoned, yet Victor visibly relaxed when he saw it. Inside, everyone entered quickly. The moment Caleb crossed the threshold, he felt different. Not safe, but calmer. The crushing pressure that had surrounded him since entering Hollow Creek seemed weaker here. Victor noticed. "You feel it too?" Caleb nodded. "What is this place?" "The oldest building in the valley. Built long before the town. The foundations sit on sacred ground. The thing below never liked this place." For the first time in days, Caleb felt a small spark of hope. Maybe they actually had a chance. Maybe. Then somebody began knocking on the church door. Knock, knock, knock. Every face in the room turned toward the entrance. Silence followed. Then the knocking returned. Knock, knock, knock. A cold wave passed through Caleb's body. The sound was identical. The same 3 knocks. The same deliberate rhythm. One of the armed men slowly approached a window. He peeked outside. His expression instantly changed. "What is it?" Victor asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped away from the window. His eyes looked distant, empty, almost hypnotized. Then he smiled, a strange smile, not his own. Victor reacted immediately. "Get away from him!" Too late. The man's body suddenly twisted. Bones cracked, skin stretched. His mouth split open from ear to ear. Within seconds, he transformed into one of the creatures from the farmhouse. The monster attacked instantly. Chaos erupted. Gunfire filled the church. The creature tore into another survivor before bullets finally brought it down. Even then, its corpse dissolved into black smoke, returning to the darkness below. Victor cursed. "It's inside our heads now." Caleb understood immediately. The thing no longer needed physical distance. It could reach them anywhere. A deep vibration suddenly shook the church. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then another tremor followed, stronger, closer. Victor looked outside, his face drained of color. "It's coming." Caleb moved beside him and froze. The creature had left the crater. The gigantic mass now crawled across the valley. Entire forests vanished beneath its body. Trees disappeared, as though swallowed by a living ocean. The thing moved slowly, but it was enormous. Every movement covered hundreds of yards, and it was heading directly toward the church. The remaining survivors exchanged hopeless looks. No rifle could stop that. No wall could stop that. Nothing human could stop that. Then Caleb remembered something. The chains. Victor turned toward him. What? The chains beneath the farmhouse. You said they weren't meant to hold it physically. Victor nodded. They kept it asleep. Exactly. Caleb's mind raced. Then maybe it can still be put back to sleep. Hope flickered briefly in Victor's eyes. Maybe, but the original ritual was lost centuries ago. Nobody remembers it. Before Caleb could respond, an elderly voice spoke from the back of the church. I do. Everyone spun around. An old woman stood near the altar. Caleb hadn't even noticed her before. She looked incredibly old, perhaps 90, maybe older. Her white hair fell to her shoulders. Her eyes remained sharp, focused, aware. Victor stared at her. Martha. The woman nodded. You finally brought him. Caleb frowned. Brought who? The old woman looked directly at him. You. The room became silent. Caleb felt a knot form inside his chest. What are you talking about? Martha approached slowly. For generations we knew this day would come. The thing beneath the valley dreams of fear, but every dream requires a dreamer. Caleb didn't understand. The old woman continued. Every few centuries someone arrives. A specific person. A person the creature cannot control, cannot imitate, cannot consume. A person capable of closing the dream. Victor stared. You think he's the one? Martha nodded. I know he is. Caleb felt completely lost. What exactly am I supposed to do? The old woman pointed toward the approaching horror outside. Put it back to sleep. The answer sounded impossible. Then another tremor shook the church. A wall cracked. The creature was getting closer, much closer. Time was running out. Martha handed Caleb a small metal object, an ancient key, dark with age, covered in strange symbols. This opens the final lock. Final lock? Beneath the crater, below the chains, there is another door. A door nobody has opened in thousands of years. Caleb stared at the key. What happens if I open it? The old woman's expression turned grim. Then you'll discover what the creature truly is. Outside, the bell tower suddenly collapsed. Stone exploded across the ground. A roar shook the valley. The creature had arrived. And for the first time since waking, it spoke Caleb's name. Caleb, Caleb. The sound echoed for miles. The church trembled violently. Windows shattered. The roof began collapsing. Victor raised his rifle. The remaining survivors prepared for a final stand. Martha looked directly at Caleb. Go. Now. Caleb tightened his grip on the ancient key. Outside, the nightmare waited. Below the crater, a hidden door waited. And somewhere beyond the stars, something was still answering the call. The church was dying. Stone walls cracked around Caleb. The floor trembled beneath his feet. Outside, the creature towered over the valley, like a living mountain of flesh and eyes. Every second it grew larger. Every second reality itself seemed to weaken around it. The ancient bell tower collapsed completely. The sound echoed across Hollow Creek. Then came the voice again. Caleb. The name rolled across the landscape like thunder. Millions of eyes opened across the creature's body. Every eye focused on him, waiting, watching, hungry. Martha shoved the ancient key into Caleb's hand. Go now. There's no time left. Victor stepped beside him. I'll get you to the crater. The remaining survivors nodded. Nobody needed to explain what that meant. Most of them weren't coming back. Caleb understood. So did they. A strange silence settled over the church. The kind of silence that appears when people accept death. Then the front wall exploded inward. The creature had reached them. Thousands of gray limbs burst through stone and wood. The survivors opened fire instantly. Gunshots filled the night. Victor grabbed Caleb. Run! They sprinted through a side exit. Behind them, screams erupted. The church disappeared beneath a wave of moving flesh. Caleb forced himself not to look back. The forest shook around them as they ran. Trees snapped like twigs. The ground split open repeatedly. From every crack emerged glowing eyes, watching, always watching. The sky looked even worse now. Almost all the stars had vanished. A gigantic shadow moved high above the clouds. The thing answering the call. The thing coming home. Victor saw it too. His face hardened. We have maybe an hour, maybe less. They reached the edge of the crater shortly before dawn. The sight nearly stopped Caleb's heart. Ashcroft Farm was gone. The entire hill was gone. In its place stretched a colossal abyss, miles wide, endlessly deep. At the center, enormous chains descended into darkness. Most had broken. Only a few remained intact. The creature's body surrounded the crater like a living ocean. Yet strangely, it didn't attack. It simply watched, as though it already knew the outcome, as though it wasn't afraid. Victor pointed downward. The final lock is down there. Caleb looked over the edge. A narrow stone staircase spiraled into the abyss. The same staircase he had seen in the cellar. Except now he realized something horrifying. The cellar had never been beneath the farmhouse. The farmhouse had been built above the staircase. Above something much older. Something far older. Caleb began descending. Victor followed. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The darkness felt alive. Whispers echoed through the abyss. Thousands of voices. Thousands of stolen lives. People who had disappeared over centuries. The lost families. The missing children. The vanished workers. All trapped somewhere below. The staircase continued endlessly. Finally, they reached the bottom. Caleb stared. A massive stone door stood before them, at least 100 feet tall, covered in ancient symbols, and in its center sat a lock. The final lock. For thousands of years, it had remained, sealed, waiting. Caleb approached slowly. His hands trembled. Victor suddenly grabbed his arm. Wait. Caleb looked back. Victor's face had gone pale. Something stood behind them. A little girl, about 8 years old, wearing an old white dress. Her face looked familiar. Then Caleb remembered. One of the photographs from the library. One of Theodore Ashcroft's missing children. The girl smiled sadly. Don't open it. Victor froze. The child continued. It wants you to open it. Caleb frowned. Martha said. Martha lied. The girl interrupted. Everything stopped. The whispers, the wind, even the distant roars. The girl looked directly into Caleb's eyes. The creature beneath Hollow Creek isn't trapped behind the door. It's trapped outside it. Caleb felt ice run through his veins. What? The girl pointed toward the living nightmare above. That thing isn't the prisoner. It's the lock. The words shattered everything Caleb thought he understood. Victor stepped backward. No. The girl nodded. Thousands of years ago, something arrived from beyond the stars. Something far worse than the creature outside. Human language doesn't have a name for it. Ancient people sealed it behind this door. Then they created the dreamer outside. The creature. Its purpose was simple. Sleep forever. Guard the prison forever. Keep the door closed forever. Caleb's heart pounded. The dreamer. The thing feeding on fear. The monster. Wasn't the enemy. It was a guardian. A living lock. Then why did it kill people? The girl's expression darkened. Because humanity kept waking it. Every century people dug too deep, explored too much, broke too many chains. The guardian became desperate, confused, hungry. But its purpose never changed. Protect the prison, protect the world. Caleb looked at the key, then at the lock. Then everything finally made sense. The voices, The manipulations, the copied faces. The creature wasn't trying to escape. It was trying to stop him from reaching the door. Stop him from making a terrible mistake. Victor whispered a curse. Martha knew. The girl nodded. She serves what's inside. A deep rumble shook the abyss. The giant door began vibrating. Something on the other side had awakened. Something aware. Something listening. The keys suddenly felt heavy in Caleb's hand. The thing beyond the stars. The thing answering the call. It wasn't coming to rescue the Guardian. It was coming for the prison. Coming for whatever waited behind the door. A voice emerged from the darkness beyond the stone. Not loud, not monstrous. Quiet, gentle, almost comforting. Open the door. Caleb froze. The voice sounded beautiful. Perfect. Open the door. The universe will end someday anyway. The words felt warm, reasonable, almost logical. Open the door, and be free. The temptation was overwhelming. For one terrifying moment, Caleb wanted to obey. Wanted to unlock everything. Wanted to see what waited beyond. Then, he noticed something. The little girl was crying. Victor was shaking. Even the whispers of the dead sounded terrified. Caleb understood. Whatever existed behind that door wasn't evil in the human sense. It was something older, something larger, something that viewed worlds the way humans viewed grains of sand. The voice came again. Open. Caleb hurled the key into the abyss. The voice stopped instantly. Silence. Absolute silence. Then something began screaming behind the door. The sound was unimaginable. Not loud. Wrong. The scream hurt reality itself. Cracks of black light spread across the stone. The prison was failing, not because Caleb refused, because it had already weakened. For thousands of years, the guardian above was dying. The lock was breaking. The prison wouldn't survive much longer. Victor looked upward. The shadow in the sky had arrived. Caleb followed his gaze. Far above the crater, the clouds parted. Something enormous filled the heavens. A shape larger than mountains, larger than cities. Its outline constantly changed. Looking directly at it made Caleb dizzy. The thing from the stars had come. The prisoner wanted out. The visitor wanted in. And Earth stood between them. The guardian roared. For the first time, Caleb understood the sound. It wasn't rage. It wasn't hunger. It was determination. The guardian was preparing for one final act. The abyss shook violently. The enormous creature surrounding the crater began. Its countless eyes closed, one by one, millions of them. Then its gigantic body started sinking, descending, returning toward the prison. Victor suddenly understood. No, the Guardian intended to seal the door permanently. Even if it destroyed itself, even if it died. The colossal mass plunged into the abyss. The chains rattled. The earth shook. The stone door began closing beneath layers of flesh, eyes, and living darkness. The Guardian was becoming the prison again, becoming the lock. Above them, the entity in the sky reacted. The heavens split apart. A beam of impossible light descended toward the crater. Caleb thought the world had ended. Then the Guardian met it. The collision illuminated the entire planet. Night became day. Mountains trembled. Oceans surged. The air itself screamed. For several seconds, reality seemed to stop. Then everything vanished in white light. Caleb woke on a hillside. Morning sunlight warmed his face. Birds sang nearby. Real birds. For the first time in days, he slowly sat up. Victor lay several feet away. Alive, barely. The crater was gone. Ashcroft Farm was gone. The creature was gone. Everything had vanished. Only an empty valley remained. Peaceful, silent, normal. Above them, the sky was clear. Every star had returned. Victor stared at the horizon. It's over. Caleb wasn't sure. Maybe the Guardian had succeeded. Maybe the prison held. Humanity had received another 1,000 years. Or maybe more. As they prepared to leave, Caleb noticed something half buried in the grass. A chain. One black iron chain. Ancient. Unbroken. He stared at it for a long time. Then he walked away. Years later, Hollow Creek would slowly recover. People returned. Homes were rebuilt. Life continued. Most dismissed the old stories as local legends. Only Caleb remembered the truth. Only Caleb remembered the thing beneath the valley. And sometimes on quiet nights, he would wake suddenly from sleep. Not because of a nightmare, because of a sound. A distant sound, so faint most people would never hear it. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. And every time he heard them, Caleb wondered the same thing. Was the Guardian still dreaming? Or was something beneath the world beginning to wake once more?